our recording. All right, let's do this. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and welcome to the 2026 New Leads Conference. So, my name is Chantel Freeman. I'm with our Office of Student Involvement and the SNHU Leads Committee, and I'm so excited to be with you all here to kick off Leads 2026 with this fantastic session, Burnout to Balance Living Smaller, Calmer, and with Intention. So Stacy Bissonette with our student involvement team and also our leads committee is joining me as well for facilitating. So you'll see her throughout. And before we have the pleasure of introducing you to your speaker for the session, we're just going to review a really quick few housekeeping items for the session. So if we could hit to the next slide, please. All right, so Teams has some great accessibility functions, which we're just going to take a moment to highlight here. So if you should need live captioning, please find the More button on the Microsoft Team navigation bar, which is usually the three horizontal dots. Select Language and Speech, and then you can click Show Live Captions. And then if you need to magnify the slides that are being shared right now, you can look at the bottom left of the window being shared and you can see there should be a little plus and minus icon, which is how you can make them bigger if that's something you need. And we can hit next slide, please. All right, so as you noticed already, your microphone and camera are not enabled. Your microphone is going to just remain muted just to reduce any background noise. The chat, however, will be available throughout the presentation, so you're welcome to engage with that. However, we do encourage you to hold any questions that you may have for the presenter for a Q&A at the end. So the presenter won't necessarily be monitoring the chat as we present the material, so we don't want any of those questions missed. And then we ask you just to be kind. We're all here to learn, engage, and be with the community. So we ask you to not photograph, screenshot, or take any personal recordings of anyone in attendance. And we ask you to refrain from sharing any offensive content or using inappropriate language as well. So we appreciate your cooperation in making this session inclusive for everyone. And the webinar is being recorded for a later viewing, so there's no obligation to use the chat for your participation in the session. So with that, we'll hit the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it to Stacy, who gets to introduce you to the presenter for this session.
Thank you so much, Chantel. So I have the pleasure of introducing to you all our first speaker of the day. So Scott Boisine is an advising team lead at SNHU with extensive experience supporting online learners and building student-centered programs. He holds a Master of Science in Education from the University of Southern Maine and a professional cert in Artificial Intelligence from the MIT Sloan School of Management. Scott has served in a variety of higher education roles, including academic advising, student support, and leadership positions such as Dean of Students. His work is guided by a strong commitment to access, clarity, and student success with the focus on helping learners navigate their academic journeys with confidence. Scott is also a visual artist who resides in Fort Kent, Maine, and is an avid world traveler who enjoys art, music, cooking, interior design, and classic movies. So with that being said, I would now like to turn the microphone over to you, Scott. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be here to share this personal journey with me that encapsulates both my personal life and my professional existence. And I'm so excited to see so many people from all over the country joining us today. So I would like to start by framing the conversation about what burnout actually is. And I'm going to start by telling you my burnout story. And it sounds like I'm starting on a downer, but it's going to go up after this. So I have been in higher education for 26 years, and most of that time, actually I've been there 30 years, but the first 26 years, I spent most of my time at a small campus in the University of Maine system. And as you know, on a small campus, everybody wears many hats. And sometimes when you're young and energetic and you're looking to build your career, you're quick to say yes to all those hats. And I did that throughout my career, throughout the 26 years I was there. I started in student affairs in the res halls. Oh, goodness gracious, I lived in the res halls and built my way through, got my master's degree, became the dean of students, and then had an opportunity to switch roles to an entirely new department, and I became the dean of community education on campus. And on that campus, we were focusing on building a program on early college and concurrent enrollment. We became we were one of the smallest campuses in Maine. We had one of the largest early college and concurrent enrollment programs that I built. And we did that with partnerships with over 100 high schools that built over time. So in the last 4 or 5 years of my career at the University of Maine at Fort Kent, I was sort of a one-man band with a little bit of help, building this giant early college and concurrent enrollment program with 100 plus high school partners. I was traveling all the time. There's 1 year I spent over 200 days in hotels. I was working all the time, bringing work home at night, on weekends. And on top of all of that, I was also doing a side gig in helping people with strategic planning. I said yes to every committee and board that I got invited to be on. I chaired some of them. And I reached the point where I sort of hit a wall. I was not 25 anymore. I was approaching my 50s at the time. I started getting very tired and I burnt out. And when I say burnout, I mean it's an emotional, mental, and physical overload that affects your overall well-being and productivity. So not only did that burnout affect my work, it also affected my life and my health. And it took me a while to realize that I was burnt out. And when I did, I had sort of an emergency situation one day where I thought I was having a heart attack. And I went to the hospital and found out I was having a panic attack. It's the first one I'd ever had. Scary thing, by the way, if you've never had one. Um, and that's when I sort of had an epiphany and said, you know what? I'm done. I'm done overdoing. I am done burning myself out. So I made a giant leap and I left the position I was at for 26 years and decided to seek something else. And what I found was work at Kenzie Academy and then ultimately here at SNHU, which is a fantastic balance. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what that burnout was and how I got over it. So here are some common causes of burnout. Um, Overcommitment and urgency. Oh my goodness. I think urgency became my middle name. Um, I took on too many responsibilities, which created constant pressure. And that was my own pressure, pressuring myself. On top of that, there were other pressures. Being an administrator on a small campus, there were times when, there were 2 or 3 of us left on campus and we were running the whole campus. It was very, very difficult. And those constant feelings of urgency, we never, we always felt like we were never caught up. And I always felt like I was never caught up. And it became sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that, I started being, busy on purpose. And it was just crazy. Um, then digital and calendar overload and comparison. Oh my goodness, excessive screen time, social media, etc. I was thriving on being busy. Whenever somebody would see me, they'd say, "Oh, how are you doing?" I never spoke about myself. I talked about how busy I was and how overloaded my calendar was. And I started to realize that that job and all the other things that I was saying yes to had taken over my personality, had taken over my actual life. I was now being defined by my work and by my busyness. And when I realized that, I realized that's probably not a good thing. And so I was equating my personal value with productivity. And that led to chronic stress and burnout. And to that moment when I thought, I'm having a heart attack. And so that's some of the common causes of burnout. So what are the symptoms, common symptoms of burnout? I can tell you I had a lot of these. I'll start with the physical ones because those are the easiest. Chronic fatigue. I was always tired. I was catching cold left and right. I was always sick. I didn't have the headaches, but some people do. Gastrointestinal issues, muscle tension. Goodness gracious, if it wasn't for my chiropractor, I wouldn't be walking. A lot of sleep disturbances, and some of those were self-imposed. If I was really busy, I'd go to bed very late, get up very early so I could catch up, even though I never really caught up. But I would do that to myself. Weakened immunity, that's why I was always sick. Heart palpitations, and significant changes in appetite. So I will tell you, I've always been a big guy, but in a few weeks after I left my position, I lost somewhere around 15 pounds. So in a couple of weeks. So clearly the weight gain was a part of it. Um, the mental piece, chronic mental fatigue, overwhelming feelings of being trapped or helpless or busy, and that ultimately started to knock my motivation down. And I will tell you, yeah, I became negative. I tend to be a very jubilant, sort of positive person. That started to trickle away from me. And the toughest, I would say, symptoms of burnout are the emotional ones. Being, feeling like you're depressed, reduced empathy. I didn't have time to worry about other people. I was just worrying about what I was doing. Emotional numbness is real, and a level of cynicism towards work or life. I stopped enjoying what I was doing, and that to me was sort of a big red flag. So when I pulled away from my work situation and found something calmer and cooler, I also realized that it wasn't just about work, it was about my life in general. Let me tell you, I had way too much stuff around me. I had mental stuff, I had emotional stuff, but I also had physical stuff. I was just sort of running through life without really thinking about it. I was just doing and doing and doing, and I wasn't being intentional. I wasn't paying attention to what was around me. I was also spending money like it was going out of style because hey, I needed those moments of joy, so I would buy a new jacket or buy a new pair of shoes or something like that, or take another trip. I still do take another trip because I love travel, but um, so I started reading and watching YouTube videos about minimalism and what that meant. And often we define minimalism as an interior design theory or interior design, and it's much more than that. It's more than just having an uncluttered home. It's really about living intentionally rather than by habit or excess. As I said earlier on, I was living my life based on my calendar and based on what other people were telling me I had to do or what other people were imposing onto my calendar or to my life. When in all reality, I wasn't paying attention. And living intentionally really means you're paying attention to everything you're doing. You're taking the moment to really enjoy what you're doing and really understand what you're doing. Minimalism is also keeping only what adds value and removing what doesn't. So we've all seen the videos of, declutters going into people's homes and helping them get rid of their mounds of stuff. I wasn't exactly a hoarder, that's for sure. But I was, I had too many things. For one person, I had too much clothes. I had too many everything. So I started looking at minimalism and saying, if I can clear my space, if I can clear my calendar and all those things, then my life will be better for me. So I started doing that. I started reducing physical, mental, and emotional clutter. Let me tell you about the physical one. I I purged my house. It was I used to have, two or three closets full of clothes, stuff I never wore. And I was like, why do I have this? Why somebody else could use this. So I now have literally half a closet with very, very simple clothing. The mental clutter, I was so involved in everything that I didn't know whether I was coming or going. So I decided to sort of pick the things I really love to do and focus on those. So previously, for example, if you saw in my bio, I'm a visual artist. Well, I was so busy that I never got to do my painting. Now I take time to do that and I calm down and I do that. And it helps me with my mental state, it helps me emotionally, but I also love doing it. Um, I chose clarity over accumulation. So I think about everything I do. So I'll give you a simple example. I love incense. I love the smell of incense. I think it's wonderful. And I sort of rediscovered it after I went into minimalism because I really love the aroma. And now when I light incense, I have like a beautiful little incense burner and I pick only the very best flavors of it, not flavors, but aromas. And I used to just buy incense like crazy, right? I just stacked it up. I had every possible smell in the world when that wasn't doing anything for me. There are 2 or 3 smells that I really enjoy. So now I get rid of all the other ones and I focus. So whenever I burn incense, I have a clear focus and I spend a little time lighting it nicely, and I enjoy the beautiful incense burner I have. Everything is done with intention. And I have created space for what truly matters in my life. Physical space, emotional space, etc. So living intentionally rather than by habit, I now say no to extra committees and community involvement or social obligations. Um, Instead of agreeing out of routine or guilt, I used to say yes to everything. And it got to the point where I realized that if you say yes to everything, if you try to do everything, you're not going to be able to do all those things well. And I look back at my past at times and I look at the number of things that I did, and I'm proud of many of them, but many of them I look back with some regret and sort of say, I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd have done that. If I'd have been living with intention during those times, I would have realized that. But I didn't at the time because I was too busy and I was actually thriving in my head about being too busy. I thought that was the important thing to do. Um, when it comes to physical space, keeping items in my home that I use regularly or that bring me joy are the only things that I have. I don't accumulate anymore. I have disciplined myself, and it's not a negative discipline. It's a very positive one. I used to love to shop. I don't know if it gave me some sort of adrenaline rush or stuff, but I used to just accumulate stuff like crazy. Now, I hardly ever shop. And if I buy something, like if I buy a new hoodie, because I like hoodies, they're comfortable. And I used to have to wear suits all the time to work. Now I can wear hoodies. It makes me happy. So if I buy a new hoodie, it replaces an old hoodie, right? I don't add an extra hoodie to my life. I just replace an old one. And I'm very intentional about that. My friends used to joke, because I used to love to throw get-togethers and parties and stuff. I had more glassware than the local bar had. And I was just like, why am I doing this? I never serve martinis. Why do I have a set of 12 martini glasses in my cupboard? So I cleared that stuff out of my house, just like I cleared stuff out of my brain. And it really has made my life so much simpler to deal with. Plus, there's less to clean and deal with, I'll be honest with you. Um, so clearing out those unused items from my workspace as well. So I have become almost vigilantly organized. Things that I don't use are not saved. Um, I'm not checking email all the time. I used to check emails all the time. Sometimes I'd get up in the middle of the night. I was like, oh, I better check my emails. I never do that anymore. When I shut my computer down at 4:30 at night, you're not going to see me again via email until the next morning or until after I'm coming back after a weekend. Um, I do the same thing with Teams messages. I try to respond to my team. I'm a team lead. I try to respond to them quickly, but if I'm off, they're not going to hear a response from me. Um, so I've really learned how to let go of that need to constantly be reactive to other people. Um, I have simplified my calendar. Part of that is because I've stopped saying yes to everything. I say yes to some things that are really important to me, like presenting at a leads conference. Love that. But I don't say yes to everything. I really believe that valuing my experiences over accumulating them is really important. Now, I'm also at a season in life, I'm in my mid 50s, where I'm not really building my resume anymore. So it depends on where you're at. So I don't need that long list of committees anymore to prove that I'm capable. Um, but I never really did, because if everything I'd done really well, then people would have seen that I'm capable at those 2 or 3 things instead of those 20 or 23 things. So I'm very intentional about my actions and I'm less impulsive. And by simplifying my schedule and surroundings, I have uninterrupted time. Can you believe that? Uninterrupted time for family. My work is more meaningful to me, for rest and reflection. Yeah, I started taking naps. Oh my goodness. Talk about an amazing freeing thing to do. 20-minute naps are beautiful. Instead of, I used to think that every single hour had to be filled. It doesn't. You can have time for yourself. So here are 6 tips that I would like to leave with you for living smaller, calmer, and with intention. 1, decide what matters most to you. That is going to be different depending on who you are and depending on what you value in life. And it may also be dependent on where you are in life. Maybe if you're just starting up your career, it's one thing. If you're a student, that's another thing. But decide what matters most. Let core priorities guide daily choices. And that means that sometimes you have to sit down and actually come up with what those core priorities are and write them down. Remove one form of excess at a time. Folks, I have been decluttering and moving towards minimalism over about a 5-year period. It did not happen overnight. I'm still working on certain things, and I probably will be for a long period. So remove one form of excess at a time. Let go of items, let go of commitments, but you don't have to get rid of everything at once because then you'll feel lost, honestly. Simplify your daily systems. Try to use fewer tools, fewer routines, and processes you can actually maintain. That can be a little hard sometimes if you're in a job, let's say at SNHU, that has a lot of different systems, a lot of different data repositories, those kinds of things. But if you can keep those organized and focus on the ones that are most important to you, you'll be more productive with less. Protect your time. Oh my goodness. I now have a Teflon coating around my calendar. I set boundaries and leave space between commitments. I have learned to say no. In a strange way, I've always been sort of an introvert, but I played an extrovert in my career because that's what was expected of me. I did that with family and friends as well. I said yes to everything. Now, and I think it shocked a few people sometimes, I set boundaries. If there's something going on that I don't want to do, I've learned to say no. Or I've learned to say, not this time. I'll try again next time. And I don't think you absolutely need an explanation for that. I think the people who truly know you, respect you, and love you will understand who you've become. And they have for me. And this is really important to me about setting those boundaries. And this has helped me reduce my calendar. It's helped me reduce my stress. It's been a really important move for me. I practice intentional pauses. I create moments to reflect before adding something new. If somebody asks me to do something, or if I'm invited to do something, or I'm invited to a committee or something, which still happens, I stop and think, how is this going to affect my life? How much time is this going to take? Do I have the energy to give to it? How is it going to benefit my life, or how is it going to benefit my community if that's what I really want to do? Um, Instead of just saying yes and tell me when the first meeting is, I now stop and say, okay, well, how much time do you think this is going to take me? How much time am I going to have to commit outside of meetings or, those kinds of things? But I also, when I talk about intention, I also talk about how does this fit within my value system? So one of the things I love to do, for example, I love the arts. I love music. I love art. And so we have an arts center in our area, a new sort of grassroots arts center in our area. I have said yes to participating as a volunteer in that new arts center where I get to teach other people and children about art, which I love to do. So I will say yes to that more often because that fits into my category of things that I love, as opposed to saying yes to, oh, we have a fundraising committee for the local library. Do you want to chair it? That's literally happened to me recently. And I said no. I said first of all, I don't like fundraising. I hate fundraising. I was one of those people that whenever I had to sell tickets, I just buy all the tickets because I didn't have time to sell them. But I also, that's not something that makes me excited. I mean, I love my library and I donate to them, but you know, I I don't really want to be a fundraiser. So I said no. And I know that that might have disappointed somebody, but you know what? I walked away from that feeling good. And I regularly declutter my physical space. I talk about minimalism sometimes as sometimes being just described as your physical space, but in the grand reality of things, it is part of the deal, and I try to keep myself incredibly organized and very decluttered. So I just don't have excess stuff to deal with. And when you have less excess stuff, when you don't have that excess, it's easier to keep organized. It's easier to keep clean, and it also looks calm. It feels calm around you, and that's a really important part of my life. My friends joke with me that I take down Christmas decorations literally like the morning after Christmas. And the reason for that is because I find I like Christmas decorations in my home, but I find they clutter up the space a bit. And I can only do that for so long. I can't even imagine having my Christmas tree up like for weeks on end. I put it up a couple weeks. That's it. Um, so I'm really intentional about my physical space and about my environment. And that is probably a very good first step, because once you find calm in your physical environment, to me, there's a little bit of a natural order as to moving into your emotional and social environment as well. So these are some very simple tips. And I say they're simple, a bit of an oxymoron there because it takes a while to get there. It takes real physical, emotional, and mental energy to get to a minimalist stage where you're living smaller, calmer, and with intention. But it is so very important. And one of my favorite gurus on minimalism and living intentionally is Joshua Becker. I highly encourage you to look up his books and look up his many, many videos on YouTube. I am a junkie. I'm a Joshua Becker junkie. And one of my favorite quotes that he's ever put forward is, the first step in crafting the life you want is to get rid of everything you don't. And it took me about 50 years to figure that out. And I am so very glad I did. And I'm so very glad that hopefully in this half hour, I was able to share a little bit of that with you and that you walk away with that and maybe start making some changes in your life that'll make you calmer and more intentional about your life. Thank you very much.
Snaps for that. What a way to end there. So incredible. And like you said, it sounds so simple, but it takes so much work for the decluttering, physical and mental, all of those pieces. So thank you so much, Scott. And your
Thank
video
you.
did turn off. I don't know if you knew that, but I
Oh,
wanted to make sure you were aware.
okay.
But we do have about a minute or so for questions, if anybody, or reflections. It sounds like there's a lot of reflections, a lot of thank yous, and sort of how this was such well-timed information for folks because of what they're feeling and just what's going on. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we can get them to Scott right now as well. But love it. Yeah, this really aligns, as Marsha said, like spring cleaning, mental,
Yeah,
physical.
that's a perfect example. Yeah, I love that. So you guys can't see me anymore. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, we can see the screens, but we just can't see you, but
Oh, well, okay. You've
we
seen
can hear
enough
you.
of me anyway. I've minimized it so you can only see the screen. There we are. Yeah.
Perfect. So someone has asked, when trying to incorporate this into work, how do you share your new perspectives with coworkers? Such a great question.
Well, you can ask the team that I'm on. I bring it up in different bits and pieces. I've been very genuine and about how I've entered this workspace here at SNHU, and I would say that because I work at SNHU, there is no expectation of us as employees to stress out. The work-life balance here is fantastic. So I really haven't had to do a lot of that, but I'm just very honest. I'm very protective of my time and space, and I've shared that with my supervisors, with teammates, and it's also one of the ways that I approach leaderships. I mean, I lead a team of 10 advisors, and I know what it feels like to be overstressed and overpushed. And I try not to do that to my team. So I try to practice intentionality in that way and practice what I preach as a leader. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just a lot of really great reflections here. We are at 9:30, so there are some questions. Feel free to reach out to us if you have a burning question that you have not been able to get to. But I appreciate all of everybody has offered some really great perspectives of what's going on for them. So thank you all for being so interactive with this material, and thank you to Scott. I mean, this has been wonderful, and clearly from the chat, a lot of well-timed information for folks. So we just appreciate you being able to share
Well,
all of this information with us.
I do appreciate you being here, all of you. And if, like I said, if you have a chance, take a look at Joshua Becker on YouTube if you want more guidance. And he's absolutely fantastic. And I hope you guys have gotten something from this presentation that helps you simplify your life as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that, I mean, it's 9:31, so thank you for the extra minute of your all's time. And this lead session has officially come to an end. So thank you to Stacy, to Scott, and to all of our wonderful attendees today for participating. And we hope to see you at other sessions throughout the day. Our next session is actually at 10 o'clock. We're going to be putting some chat, helpful information and reminders that Stacy's going to pop in there. So you can find some of the helpful links for the day. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of our lead sessions.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody.